Trapani, Sicily, June 25, 1943. The following is from Johannes Steinhoff's book, Messerschmitts over Sicily. The Allied air forces in the Mediterranean had 5,000 first-line aircraft and were opposed by no more than 1,250 Axis machines, of which half were German and half Italian. Of this number, 320 German aircraft were operational, including 130 Messerschmitt 109s. Earlier, when Steinhoff was leader of two gruppe, JG-52 on the Eastern Front, Adolf Galland gave him the choice between a command in the Reich and a command in the South. Steinhoff claims General of Fighters Galland was revered by every fighter pilot, and he could talk to him and trust him. Steinhoff transferred from the Crimea to North Africa after the previous JG-77 Commodore Joachim Muncheberg was killed. After a Berlin staff meeting, Steinhoff landed in Tunis, taking command of JG-77 on the 3rd of April, 1943. A month later, on the 8th of May, 1 and 2 Gruppen, JG-77, escaped North Africa at treetop level with dogfights against Spitfires and Hurricanes while carrying their mechanics in each fuselage. They landed in Trapani and were immediately bombed by the British. It was utter confusion, ambulances, burning aircraft on the edge of the runway. Steinhoff pleaded his case to give his Geschwader a rest. He claimed German airmen were more experienced than Allied, but were worn out after 3.5 years of daily missions. The Geschwader was eventually granted a few weeks' rest in Bari, on the Italian mainland, and was afterwards reported operational on the 20th of June, 1943. The Geschwaderstab and 2 Gruppe JG-77 airfield is adjacent to the city of Trapani and its horseshoe-shaped port. Mount Ericha rose to the east. The airfield had a concrete runway and dispersal pens. Every night, the Wellingtons came over immediately after dark. They played a nuisance role, dropping bombs around the airfield to disrupt sleep. Inspector Oberst Lutzow, the Inspector South, landed from Rome. Steinhoff recalled, "The last time I had seen Lutzow was in southern Russia. My gruppe had been attached to his Geschwader in the summer of 1942. Earlier in 1941, Lutzow became the second fighter pilot after Mulders to reach 100 victories." Trapani was temporarily crowded with 2 and 3 Gruppe of JG-77 and 1 Gruppe of JG-53. Kübelwagen's 3 Gruppe had flown over from Sardinia the evening of the 24th, coinciding with Müller's 1 Gruppe from the Ace of Spades Geschwader. As he got out of the Kübelwagen, Lutzow shouted to Steinhoff,
"I want to be here for your first big defensive battle."
We sat in deck chairs at readiness in front of the operations room, which was a Nissan hut. It would be the first time Steinhoff and his men had attacked fortresses. Franzel Lutzow advised them,
"You must keep close together when you attack and dismiss any thought of mixing it with the Spitfires. The fortresses are like a fleet of battleships, and you can only get in amongst them if you break through their defensive firing in a compact phalanx. You'll be getting some rockets from the army. They're fired so they explode in the middle of the bombers and cause them to scatter. Once flushed, the fortresses can be destroyed without difficulty. Others are trying to drop large bombs above the formations. The bomb has a time fuse, and it is quite ineffective if it goes off at the wrong height. But a head-on attack, that's what spreads panic among the bombers and reduces the fight to single engagements, providing the fighters let you get there."
I saw a 109 standing atilt, with tires cut to ribbons, splinters in fuselage and cockpit, fuel leaking. Bombs had churned up the slope behind the dispersal point. Steinhoff explained, "That was my airplane. She's barely a couple months old. She had a nice smooth engine, and all in all, she was a fine machine. I was rather fond of her." I directed my ground crew to get a machine from one of the Staffen. Galland informed Steinhoff by phone that a separate group of heavy bombers had turned south and attacked the port at Messina. He ordered Steinhoff to take off. I yelled, "Scramble! Give them a green!" We raced to our planes. My ground crew had parked my new aircraft in a dispersal pen and were now helping me. I scrambled to go through the starting procedure as quickly as possible. I taxied out and waited for my Stabschwarm. Straden and Bachmann in position. A hand signal from me, acknowledged, ready for takeoff and to assemble a train of aircraft above the airfield. The general had arrived at Trapani the day before on June 24th. He made a short speech, saying, "Get in close, don't fire too soon, lead them in, head on, in close formation." He drove up to Mount Ericha, to the Freya station there. Galland was temporarily on the mountain and was planning to fly back to Comiso that day. The general apologized for not warning Steinhoff about the B-26s that bombed them.
"They were so close to the sea that our direction finders didn't pick them up. Our radio monitoring service is reporting bomber transmissions in Tunisia, and a big attack is expected."
Once the bombers form up, they maintain wireless silence. The general said,
"The direction finders had picked up the bombers well north of the island and proceeding in the direction of Naples."
Too late to intercept, but the group was ordered up to intercept them on the way back. After the morning B-26 attack, Steinhoff had briefed his commanders, Uben, 3 Gruppe, JG-77, Freitag, 2 Gruppe, JG-77, and Müller, 1 Gruppe, JG-53. Dust kicked up like a sandstorm. We made a gentle climbing turn around Mount Ericha while they took up positions. Later in July, when Steinhoff visited the Italian air base at Canizia, the base leader, Maore Visconti, informed him that unlike the Germans, his pilots had no direction finders, no alerts about approaching enemy aircraft, no guidance from the ground, and received no orders while in the air. Steinhoff planned to meet the heavies in a broad phalanx at several different heights. Galland took control of the wireless at Mount Ericha and communicated directly with Steinhoff. Making a wide left turn brought 2 Gruppe directly behind me. During the climb, I made 1 circuit of Mount Ericha. I was now crossing the coast at 10,000 feet. Above and astern, my command had formed up in battle formation. The JG-77 leaders had discussed concerns about being shot down over the sea and there being no one to pick up a downed pilot. Radio silence except for orders about the enemy's position. From Galland,
"Odysseus, turn onto 300. Pentechnicons at 20,000 feet heading west."
The haze was thick, and it was hard to see the sea.
Odysseus, Vector 2290, Angel 16.
The pilots try to keep formation without using up too much fuel. Drop tank now empty. Still a good hour of flight time left. From Gallant.
Odysseus, Steer 280. Pantechnicons presumably now at low level, since the Freya has lost contact.
Message received. We must have been halfway between Sicily and the southern tip of Sardinia. Only had 10 more minutes before a fuel shortage would force turning back. Formation widely strung out, 10,000 feet, dense haze. Odysseus calling, close up! Looking back, I could see Freitag's unit. Then Kohler's voice.
Pantechnicons right beneath us. Right beneath us, lots of them heading west.
I spotted them below. Light brown smudges stood out clearly against the gray sea. They were making for North Africa on a reciprocal course to our own. No time for a maneuver. I was compelled to start the attack from this unfavorable position without a moment's delay, whether my formation followed me or not. I dived in the direction of the bomber's left flank. Lots of radio jabber.
Throttle back a bit, please. We're using too much fuel. Got to turn back. Pantechnicons look very low. Crowds of them. Got to turn back.
The 109 speed had built up. Straden, Bachmann, Bernhardt followed me down, keeping correct station. 3,000 feet. I had to get low enough to be at the same height as the bombers. I targeted an aircraft at the center of the formation. Aim at the cockpit. Don't know when I opened fire. I pulled the ME up to the same height as the bombers, as if I had done it before. I fired, then had to wrench upwards, G-forces pressing me down high above the bombers. The cockpit was full of the smell of cordite. As I banked, I noticed I was on my own. Looking back, I saw a column of water as high as a house at the point where the bomber had crashed. The radio was active with battle sounds. I asked for a course to Trapani and climbed to 10,000 feet. Radio chatter had reached hysterical proportions with requests for vectors home, angering me. I ordered the pilots to keep their mouths shut. Your course is 130. Mount Ericha rose up like a beacon from the haze. The returning aircraft circled Trapani in quick succession. I watched them land and taxi and observed the swirls of dust raised when turning round in dispersal pens. No sooner had I switched off the engine than I realized we had been beaten. No receiver transmitter indication of any fortresses shot down. No rocking wings. Ubin telephoned his third gruppe's return. He had turned back towards Sardinia, then saw the fortresses, but didn't have fuel to attack. Freitag reported he lost sight of Steinhoff in the haze. Said his two gruppe didn't get any. We were flying at the same height as the heavies and received an absolute hail of fire as we closed to get within range. Shortly after, Müller reported they too had attacked from an unfavorable position and had come back on their last fuel reserves. From Lutzow.
The general would like to speak with you.
Lutzow reported Gallant was seizing with rage that only one bomber had been downed. There wasn't even a fighter escort. From Gallant on the phone from Mount Ericha.
The answer to the heavies is a massed attack.
Steinhoff thought, "We knew this by heart. It was what everyone was telling us, the combat reports from the fighter pilots in the Reich." I understood the disappointment. Later, a gallant phone from Comiso.
Steinhoff, I've just had a teleprint from the Reichsmarschall. Don't please get agitated when I read it to you. Take no action for the moment. To the fighter leader, Sicily. During the defensive action against the bombers' attack on the Straits of Messina, the fighter element failed in its task. One pilot from each of the fighter gruppen taking part will be tried by court-martial for cowardice in the face of the enemy. Signed Göring, Reichsmarschall. I repeat, take no action. I'll call you tomorrow. He always gets furious when his fighters don't measure up.
Steinhoff stewed over Göring's reprimand. The 5th of July, 1943, Gerbini Airfield. The daily bombing of Cosimo Airfield destroyed my previous 109 minutes after another 109 and I landed on the 27th of June. The scramble order came with heavies south of Comiso, flying north with escort. Freitag's 2 Gruppe was to take off after the Stab was airborne and green flares were fired. We started a left turn, throttled back from full power. Then came the message, "Comiso has been bombed." It was the second time that day. "The bombers are flying north, very high. Watch out for Spitfire escort." We came out of the haze at 3,000 feet. The wireless indicated the enemy was 20 miles south of Catania. 25 109s took off. One of Freitag's Staffen was on my right, the others above and behind. 25,000 feet heading north. The bombers were expected to be at 25,000 feet, with the escort at 28,000 feet. 4-engine bombers and Spitfires. In an instant, the Spitfires passed head-on through our formation. The 4-engine bombers below were flying in the same direction we were. The heavies were in the usual stepped-up battle formation. Utter chaos on the receiver transmitter. Freitag's 2 Gruppe was engaged with the Spitfires. I spotted 2 Spitfires below and dived on them from out of the sun. The number 2 Spitfire broke left. I lost sight of number 1 and started a multiple circling turn with number 2. A tight turn and the slats came out. I felt a thud from behind against the fuselage. My engine stuttered. The armor plate behind my head was being hit. I aborted the turn and did the classic evasive maneuver, a half roll and spiraling down. At 6,000 feet, I found no one was shooting at me. Oil and coolant temperature was high, so I switched off the engine. It was a fast descent, narrow strips of cultivated land surrounded by hedges. I made an approach between tall trees towards a long, narrow field that sloped up towards Mount Etna. On the forced landing, the plane nearly pitched over onto its back, but righted itself with a crash. It was a barren, rocky field. I got the straps off, switched off the radio, and felt a sharp pain in my back. The armored headrest had saved me that day. This was an hour after takeoff from Gerbini. An hour or so later, I was found by 2 Italians. Then I heard the Fiesler Storch engine. I fired a red flare, and the Storch landed near the crashed 109, with Bachmann and my chief mechanic, Sergeant Schwartz. Villagers showed up to watch. Bachmann said they lost sight of me because I attacked so suddenly. One 109 pilot, the Imp, number 4 in my Stabschwarm, was shot down on the initial pass. He had flown less than 10 missions. Schwartz stayed behind with the wreck. Bachmann and I took off. We had taken off at 2 p.m., approximately 30 miles from Gerbini. Yellow stubble was visible all the way to the horizon. We witnessed Gerbini being bombed with a curtain of dust. We landed the Straits at Trapani. We were informed the rest of the Geschwaderstab and one gruppe JG-77 had left Gerbini for Trapani. Freitag reported that the Geschwader had shot down 6 fortresses and 1 mosquito. Lieutenants Bernhardt and Flick were missing. Flick was shot down by the Spitfires in flames off Catania. The FW-190s at Gerbini bore the brunt of the bombing damage. Four FW-190s were on fire after the bombing when Freitag took off. The phone rang. Godart reported from Shaka that the airfield had been attacked by bombers and that the gruppe had shot down 5 of the Kitty Hawk escort and lost 1 109 that day. During the last week before the Allied landing, the bombardment assumed massive proportions. Every airfield landing ground and advanced airstrip was so heavily hit that only by the deployment of all available resources, including Army units, was it possible to restore a few airfields to their operational role on a makeshift basis. 10 July 1943, D-Day. Major Tema of SKG-10 later spoke with Steinhoff about attacking shipping off Jella. It's always a good moment after your bomb is gone and when you can pull up and climb out of range of the murderous fire from the ships. We had dived from 16,000 feet carrying 500-kilogram bombs. Then we ran into lightnings. They chased us inland into the valleys. I was hit and bailed out before they could finish me. One group of JG-77 remained at Shaka, where they were to attack landing craft. We were notified heavies approaching from the direction of Pantelleria. The Stab and 2 Gruppe took off from the advanced landing field. The bombers were predicted to cross the coast at Selinunte, west of Shaka. At 26,000 feet there were condensation trails. We lost height to avoid giving away our position with contrails. I spotted a coastal road which pointed to the white smudge of Jella. Innumerable ships were maneuvering at high speed. I spotted the bombers at 9 o'clock, heading for Messina. Gerbini had been laid waste one day before. Bachmann, Helbisch, and I made a wide port turn. Freitag's gruppe attacked the bombers. I spotted a lone Boeing trailing the main force. He must have been late forming up. All 3 of us fired one at a time at the B-17, closing fast. Only Bachmann managed to damage it. There was a fuel leak from the outer starboard engine. My cannon was not working. On my second pass, with machine guns only, I had some hits. The B-17 banked and Bachmann hit him from 6 o'clock, flying almost in formation with the bomber. Bachmann hit the same engine, and it stopped. The B-17 turned 180 degrees. We were at 13,000 feet as the four of us crossed the coast, with fuel now streaming from two of the bomber's engines. Our fuel was running out, so we disengaged and flew northwest back to the advanced landing ground. Freitag's gruppe was still fighting. 15 minutes later, 12 of the 16 109s returned. Hauptmann Freitag was missing. Two gruppe had flown into the middle of the Spitfires. The Spitfires beat it, abandoning the bombers. 6 B-17s went down in flames. 15 more 109s landed on the landing ground and included Godard and Kohler. They had run into warship anti-aircraft. They saw American gliders on the beach. They shot down a Storch-like observation plane. Grumman Martlets were seen. The 109s attacked the landing craft. That group had come from Shaka. B-26s showed up, and the 88s fired at them, causing 10 parachutes to appear. Trapani had been attacked multiple times per day for 2 weeks, but we could still land there. We no longer had a fuel truck, so we had to fill the 109 tanks with hand pumps. Two B-26s crashed beside the airfield. The 109s moved to Trapani that night, the 10th of July, at sunset. The 12th of July, 1943. There were 21 air battles in the latter half of May through the early days of July. The Germans sustained heavy losses. The next mission for Steinhoff involved a takeoff from Trapani. He was to attack the B-17s at the Straits of Messina, then land at Gerbini. He received a teleprint from the Air Corps, from Göring.
Together I can only regard you with contempt. I want an immediate improvement in fighting spirit. If this improvement is not forthcoming, flying personnel from the commander down must expect to be remanded to the ranks and transferred to the Eastern Front to serve on the ground. Göring, Reichsmarschall.
The telephone rang. It was the general.
We're near Taormina. We're surrounded. Do you understand me? Comiso is no longer usable. Collect all the aircraft in western Sicily and go to Garbini. The airfield is usable. By now, your third gruppe is on its way from Sardinia, and they will also land at Gerbini. Your job is to protect the Straits of Messina.
Seems the Allies were taking over Sicily quickly. Airfields continued to be bombed. There were few places, if any, to land. Steinhoff had earlier visited Canizia, the Italian air base, and noted it was in good condition, with a long runway, a pen surrounded by a rampart of white tuff. The Maquis fighters still had North African desert camouflage in neighboring pens. On the 12th of July, Allied bombers carpet-bombed Canizia. I drove up to Mount Aricia to talk with the Italian air commander. The CO said he was uninformed about the invasion. He had no communication with the Italian army. His radio set for aerial communication was old and useless. The Italian Colonnello asked if he could be included in German communication. I agreed to link Visconti's op room at Canizia with my own Geschwader's op room. It wasn't easy for the Italians to ask favors from the Germans. No Ju-52 transport aircraft were available. JG-77 pilots were constantly wondering how they were going to get off the island. All ground personnel to be dispatched to Messina. We checked our loading lists and were ordered to destroy all equipment we couldn't take with us. Steinhoff, along with Straden, Bachmann, and Zahn, landed at Gerbini, which consisted of blackened areas, bomb craters, and burnt olive trees. Steinhoff was informed his plane needed new plugs, which would take an hour. Godard would lead the Geschwader in his place. Straden would lead the Stabschwarm. Oberst Lutzow landed his 109.
The spearhead of the British 8th Army is now about 25 miles south of here. The American 7th has advanced from Gela, presumably with the intention of linking up with the British here on the plains of Catania. What that signifies for you in western Sicily and for the defense of the island as a whole is pretty obvious.
You mean evacuation?
What else?
An orderly withdrawal, if possible.
Aircraft and other equipment can be replaced. Experienced mechanics can't. If you can get your people across the Straits of Messina, we'll be able to re-equip the Geschwader.
The 109s took off to defend the Straits of Messina. The Geschwader flew west and attacked B-17s, but was in turn attacked by Spitfires. Hauptmann Straden was hit and bailed out. In North Africa, permission to evacuate had come much too late. Steinhoff was resolved to evacuate his men from Sicily before it was too late. They would rebuild the nucleus on the Italian mainland. An order was received from Air Corps. Proceed to alternative landing grounds near Trapani. Forthwith, together with the Stab 1 and 2 Gruppe JG-77, 3 Gruppe will return to Sardinia by way of shipping at Gela. Steinhoff and 9 109s took off. More would follow after refueling. Steinhoff flew through cloud to reveal Gela's white beach. We were at 300 feet above the road paralleling the coast. Other 109s were close behind in a string. Trucks and tanks were lined up along the road. I fired at a tank. I was in a climbing right turn while looking back at the burning vehicles, jeeps bumping off-road. One of the 109s collided with a vehicle and exploded. We packed up from Trapani. The 109s would be used to transport whatever could be evacuated to the mainland. 4 pilots were lost that day. On the 13th of July, 1943, an order arrived from Gallen to Steinhoff.
Western Sicily will be evacuated. JG-77 will fly all serviceable aircraft to the mainland forthwith. Ground personnel will be dispatched to Milazzo by way of the north coast without delay. The Führer's orders that no soldier may leave the island are still in force.
We had daylight at 5 a.m. The remaining aircraft were dispersed over 4 airfields: Trapani, Shaka, and the 2 advanced landing grounds. Recon patrols were sent out to Tunisia, Pantelleria, and Malta. The Allies were exclusively bombing the eastern part of Sicily. Almost everything was packed up for move, but we had no idea how it would be transported. By 8:30 a.m., the order to evacuate was received. We began destroying whatever couldn't be evacuated. The 88mm flak team was to remain behind. I supervised the equipment destruction at Trapani and was the last pilot to leave in late afternoon. The other 109s had carried some ground crew with them. I took the Geschwader war diaries with me. After the war, Steinhoff's memories dwelled on Sicily. We were assigned a task which was incapable of execution. It was then I realized that a turning point had come, and we were on the road to defeat. In his book, Steinhoff used substitute names for some of his fellow aviators. Here's an attempt to correlate the character names in the book with the actual pilots. That's the end. Thanks for watching.